And so here we are having that education conversation, and joining us in the room this morning is Ndung'u Wangenye, who is the National Secretary, Kenya Teachers in Hardship and Arid Areas Welfare Association, otherwise known as KETHAWA, and the former CECM Education for Nyandarua County. So you're here this morning and we want to say Karibu Sana.
Thank you very much. I'm happy also to join you this morning.
Thank you for being here. We're going to be talking things education. One of the big ticket items, of course, that we mentioned earlier on in the show was that, you know what, math or no math, and that's what we'll be talking about today. Is it absolutely necessary? The Principal Secretary, State Department of Basic Education, Belio Kipsang, Doctor, told us a couple of days ago that math will no longer be compulsory when it comes to selection of courses at the senior secondary level. We'll be talking about that today. But in true Situation Room style, we want to welcome you to the show. CT, this young man to your left, goes around the African continent every week. He comes to a different country, and every week he brings us proverbs from that country. So this week, he'll tell you where we are, and he'll tell you the proverb, and you will please interpret that for us and tell us what it means to you.
Okay.
All right.
Welcome.
Yes, we are in the Republic of Sudan, a beautiful country, Africa's third largest country, Africa's third largest producer of gold. Believe it or not, this is a country that is rich in agriculture, okay? 60% of its population lives and thrives on agriculture. Now, the thing I've often found puzzling is when I look at the problems this country has, it's a member of the UN, it's a member of the AU, it's a member of the Arab League. And yet from the time it got its independence in 1958, it has had 7 coups. So you wonder, these memberships that people have, what purpose do they actually serve? Because I would have assumed that one of these fellows would have picked up this thing and said, guys, why don't we sit and talk about this? But, story for another day. The proverb. O digger of a pit of wickedness, widen your lying place in it.
Repeat the proverb.
I will do so. O digger of a pit of wickedness, widen your lying place in it. The 8 here being the pit.
You need me to interpret?
Yes,
Please.
absolutely.
Please.
Those digger of a big pit, they actually widen it for them. In other words, when you dig a big hole and you widen it, you are the one to fall in that hole. So it therefore means that you have to be very careful when you are digging a hole to make sure that it is not so wide for you. You end up being falling there. And that is my interpretation of the proverb, if I got it correctly.
The thing about your interpretation is that it can't be wrong. We ask for your interpretation. There's a story in the Bible told of a man whose master was about to sack him. And he was a steward, so he was in a position to determine what his master had in day-to-day language, his boss, his employer had, and what didn't have. So what did he do? He called people who owed his employer and said, this one which you owe, 50, make it 25. This one you 100, make it 50, like that. And the Bible goes on to say that this man was praised. He said, this is a man who knows how to look after his future. Because he was laying the path for when he left, because he knew he was going to leave, he could go to these people and said, did I not make life easy for you? Now it's your turn. If he was living in Kenya, he would have said, I'm giving you this discount, but just give me my share now. Yes, that's what a Kenyan would have done. Okay.
Bringing it closer home.
Indeed. Great way to get it off, isn't it?
Interpretation.
Absolutely. So, let's look at the news and what the news said about this particular issue before we dive into the conversation, shall we?
Yes.
Mathematics will no longer be compulsory subject for learners transitioning to senior secondary school. Now, let's establish that senior secondary school is grade 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay? Marking one of the most radical changes under the competency-based curriculum. Instead, students will be required to take English or Kenya Sign Language, Kiswahili, physical education and community service, learning as mandatory subjects, while choosing from a pool of 38 options to shape their academic and career journeys. This is a shift from the outgoing 844 system, where mathematics was a core subject alongside English, Kiswahili, and at least 2 sciences, physics, chemistry, or biology. Basic Education Principal Secretary Belio Kipsang announced Tuesday last week that grade 9 learners, the Pioneer CBC class, will begin selecting their subjects and senior schools in the second term of this year. That's in another month or so. And he says we are giving them time to go home so that parents and learners can consult on their interests and what they wish to pursue. The selection process will begin immediately when they return to school. Additionally, the Ministry of Education has proposed limiting the number of learners from a single junior secondary school joining the same senior school to a maximum of 5. So those are other details. But this is what we're looking at now, that they go back for selection in term 2. Grade 9s right now in term 1, when they come back from the 3-week holiday around Easter, they will come back to school and they will start making the selections, whereby mathematics was compulsory. It was one of the core subjects. Now what they're saying is it's no longer going to be a core subject, and it seems that everybody's gotten their knickers in a twist. Why, Ndung'u?
Thank you. One, let me first just correct you that senior school is not grade 9, 10, 11, and 12.
Sorry,
it's actually 10, 11,
I beg your
and
pardon,
12.
right? It's 10, 11, and 12 because junior school is 7, 8, and 9.
Exactly.
Yeah, I beg your pardon.
Yeah. And just to Google our mind or flashback our minds a bit, this grade junior secondary school, initially, it was supposed to be domiciled in secondary schools, the current existing secondary schools. Say for the year 2022, when the new Kenya Kwanza government came into power, and there was established a presidential working party on education reforms. And I remember quite very well, I was a CEC in charge of education in Nyandarua County. And that is when the parents gave the participation, during public participation. And they said, these kids are a bit too tiny.
Too young
to move to secondary schools. Because we are speaking of maybe your son is taken from Nairobi and at grade now 7, all the way maybe to Kisumu, or maybe to Turkana or Mombasa, wherever.
How old are children of that age? Of that class?
A child of grade 6, maybe 10, 11 years. Okay? So you're speaking, there's still a toddler. This is somebody who is not yet out of the mother's laps. So that child will require a lot of a mother's care than when he is just alone, being combined with other boys who are age 18. Because by the time they are finishing actually grade 12, some of them will be age 18. Some of them will even be 19 already with IDs. Or maybe anticipating to take the ID.
True.
So that is how it came to be. Now, let me just come back to the questions you have just asked. And let me just speak from the foundation that I am a mathematics teacher by profession and by training. My first degree was Bachelor of Education in Science, Mathematics and Chemistry. Later I pursued Masters and I later pursued law, and I became a lawyer and an advocate of the High Court. But now, that notwithstanding, it is that, what is this in mathematics that is making mathematics that it has, we are insisting as parents, because I also am a father of 3 kids, and my firstborn is actually in Form 3, the old system. But why are we insisting, and why is it that the ministry want to make the mathematics is not compulsory? Number one, the ministry and the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development, initially it was called KIE. The one in somewhere in Gara.
Yes.
You remember that one?
Yes, I do. Initially,
where they established the CBC, and currently it's not called the CBC, it's called CBE, Curriculum-Based Education. They established 3 pathways. The first pathway is what we call STEM.
Yes.
That is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. The second pathway is sports. Okay? And the third pathway is called arts. Now, when those people are pursuing, they only now insisting that only those kids who will be pursuing STEM will take mathematics as compulsory, because you cannot do without mathematics if you are pursuing engineering. I'm sure somebody who designed this building, came up with this beautiful architect, is a very sharp mathematician, because he has to measure the dimension, he has to know where the columns are, where the pillars will be, and all that. Okay? Somebody who is also pursuing mathematics in general, like you are pursuing pure mathematics, statistics. I did statistics in university, my first degree. And you have to be conversant with that mathematics. Somebody also who is doing technology, he has also to be conversant with the numbers and mathematics.
Yes.
And that is why they insisted only those who are pursuing STEM will make mathematics compulsory. Those who are pursuing sports, to the thinking of KICD, they said they don't require mathematics. But now, this is where we are coming in as parents, as also as stakeholders, because I am a serious stakeholder in education sector. And we are saying, yes, they may not require that deep mathematics, like the ones we are doing in university, the topology, the linear geometry, okay, they are the geometry. Are we together?
Yes.
But they require general mathematics. Because even somebody, like now, I'm a lawyer also by profession. Whenever you are making submissions in court, like maybe when you are doing a succession case, I need to require the number of properties the deceased has. I have to tabulate them. Value, how much is their value in terms of Kenya shillings or in dollars or whatever currency it is, and then distribute to the number of dependents that are there. If I don't have basics mathematics and I just give to my friend here or my friend here to do the tabulation for me and bring it back to me, even when he misleads me, I may not know.
Absolutely.
Are we together?
We are.
So, and that is why we are saying, even if it is not all the mathematics, that the deeper bit of mathematics, okay, when you speak of maybe statistics, when you speak of trigonometry, when you speak of calculus, people tend to run away. Those are some of the units that were feared during the time we were doing mathematics in high school. But when you bring general mathematics of numbers, that is a basic requirement in any course or whatever you may be doing, be it a doctor, be it a lawyer, be it a sports person, be it an artist. You require that basic mathematics. And that's why you are telling the ministry, there was public participation the whole of last week, and we are telling the ministry and the KICD, please, let us review this.
Okay.
Let's see how minimum can we do that mathematics. So that again, we don't do away with it, and later we may require it when it is too late and we have wasted a generation.
So, I mean, it is obvious that when you look across board, there's a very basic mathematics that anybody would need in whatever field you're going to enter into. At a very basic level.
Exactly.
So taking that into consideration, in your opinion, or from what you see, why then would the Ministry of Education then deem it necessary to say it's no longer compulsory, knowing full well this other side? Why would they do that?
Maybe, I think there was no intense and deep participation, particularly from the stakeholders. Because I'm a stakeholder, okay? I give my input, or I may have given my input. I may not have given my input. There is another stakeholder. There are unions that represent teachers also, as we represent teachers those who are in hardship. They are parents, a serious stakeholder. There is parent association. Okay, there is the sponsors, the faith-based institution that sponsors schools, the CAVREX, the PCA, like the alliance. It was formed through Alliance of Churches. Okay, all those stakeholders. If there was intense consultation, and particularly also to the subject experts. Yesterday, I saw a press release by Institute of Engineers of Kenya saying that mathematics is at least a requirement. I also saw another tweet from a very senior advocate in this country, Nelson Harvey, who was former LSK chairperson, saying that even if we may not require all these deep-rooted mathematics, at least we require the basics mathematics. So those are serious stakeholders. If we can just pause a minute and listen to them, maybe we can tilt a bit. We are not yet over, because this is, as I'm saying, CBE is a working document. It is still in continuation. It's not an end on itself. It's not yet complete. We are still building on it. So I still believe, and I believe that there is time to continue building and making it even better, so that the mathematics that we shall be putting in the other two pathways, say for STEM, will also be the minimum requirement of mathematics and not the deep mathematics that we may go for somebody who is doing STEM pathway.
Now,
what?
You go first. I give you the opportunity today. Okay, Ndung'u.
Yes.
As we talk about the basic of mathematics in all that we do in life, everyone at some point comes in contact with mathematics. And when the president was forming the presidential working party, they went across the country seeking advice from different stakeholders, parents and whatnot. But it is a situation where the decision on mathematics is being given as a policy from the government without involving everybody, as was done during the presidential working party, which begs the question, why would the government in its place make such a decision without consultation? Is it that at this point consultation that was done during the presidential working party is enough, and that further decisions being made is a decision to be made by the ministry itself?
I'll answer that question and by saying this way. There is and I have a privilege having worked with the former head of public service, Governor Francis Kimemia. You know, he was former head of public service in the Republic of Kenya during President Kibaki's reign.
Yep.
And there are two things that he used to tell us. There is making the policy and there is execution bit of it. Now, anytime you make a policy, and even in law, anytime you make a registration or an act of parliament or a statute, then there is the person who is supposed to execute it. This comes on what we call the standard operating procedures. Now, we have the presidential working party has gone to the field, okay? They have said we want 3 pathways on a CBE, curriculum-based establishment, or curriculum-based education. We want STEM, we want arts and sports, and we want social sciences. But now, the nitty-gritties on what will be the details that will be the specific subject that will be learned in specifically that pathway of STEM, the specific details of subject that will be learned in arts and sports, the specific details of that what to be learned in social sciences. Who is to develop that? It is KICD.
Yes,
it is not as the parents.
Yes. No.
It is not even the bigger ministry. It is not even another big stakeholder
That's
like
why
Teacher Service
KICD
Commission.
was set up.
That is why KICD is there, Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development, so that they go into finer details, so that for a child to succeed along this line, he requires subject A. Actually, KICD even develop the number of hours you are supposed to take in each and given subject. Take maybe mathematics, for example, because it's a contentious one. They'll say for the mathematics, for 1 week, you need 48 hours, or you need 24 hours. In combined, okay? So they go into finer details and to make sure, and they keep on reviewing those policies so that they are in tandem, because they may allocate a lot of time to mathematics and later realize, oh, chemistry needed more time than mathematics, then they reallocate. And that is why we have subjects even in a classroom. A subject is going for 40 minutes,
Yes.
Another one is going for 35 minutes, another one is going a double lesson, another one does not have a double lesson. Why all that? It is because KICD looks at the specific details, and that is what we call in normal management system, standard operating procedures that are developed by the implementers. So here we are pinning the KICD, Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development, the implementers, to come and review and say, instead, because we have agreed with the pathways, that one is not contentious, and I presume so, even from this room. It is not contentious even with the parents. It is not contentious with other stakeholders. But this specific one of mathematics, what can we do to make sure that we get it back on track?
You know, there's a discussion that I've heard from the time I could understand discussions, and this was whether maths was a science or an art subject. I want you to tell me, what do you think?
Yes, by the way, and thank you very much for that question. Actually, when we are again, when I was pursuing maths, because I did Bachelor of Education in Science. Science.
Yes.
We were doing mathematics. Those who are pursuing Bachelor of Education in Arts, they were also doing mathematics. What does that tell us? Maths cuts across. Because you would find somebody, we are in the same university, he is, maybe he is being trained to be an arts teacher, Bachelor of Education in Arts. He is taking mathematics and geography as his teaching subjects. Me, I take mathematics and chemistry, but mine is Bachelor of Education in Science, but for him is Bachelor of Education in Arts. So I agree with you. Maths cut across the board. And even somebody who has even done medicine will require mathematics.
You know, I also studied Bachelor of Education.
Good.
But in linguistics and literature. We did not study maths. That is, of course, if I consider statistics, not maths.
Statistics is
We study statistics. You cannot study education as a subject without studying statistics. But the thing that opened my mind to the question I'm asking, there is a subject we study called philosophy of education. And when you look at philosophy, there's a subset of philosophy called logic. Logic is where you now begin to understand critical thinking and problem solving. Maths is at the core of critical thinking and problem solving.
Very good.
That's why it cuts across everything. Engineering is an exact science. You have to think. You have to solve problems. Engineering solves problems. So when somebody is busy working out the mathematical formulas, you're actually solving a problem. So if we take just that component of problem solving, how then do you say, as KICD, that you do not want people to develop their problem solving and critical thinking capacities? Because that is what you will have done.
Yes.
How? Where is the justification? Just on that premise alone.
Let me say this, that there has been various reforms at KICD, and one of them is even renaming the institute itself from being an institute to a curriculum development center. And even in the management, and I'm happy because majority of those people who came from KICD today, they hold some of the senior positions. One of them is the current Kenya National Examinations Council CEO, Dr. Jengere. He was former director, KICD. Today we have Professor Ogondo, also a very qualified professor, who is the director KICD. And one of the things that maybe, and that is what I'm also repeating this maybe for clarity purpose, is that the reforms that have been taken to KICD, and today, even if you write a book, you and him and I, or maybe with her, we write a book. Today, before it is admitted to schools to be used in the curriculum, it has to be assessed and approved by KICD. Okay? Initially, you could find that he writes a book, and it is in the market, and it is, with our children in the classroom, which has not been approved by the institute. What kind of knowledge are we disseminating to those young kids that has not been cross-checked by the experts in particular subject? Today, even as a CEC of education in Nyandarua, because we are in charge totally of village polytechnics and ECDs, that is nursery schools.
Yes.
Despite the fact that as a devolved function, we couldn't buy a single book without an approval of KICD.
I really have to ask here that I wouldn't want to imagine that the Ministry of Education would make a decision like this without some kind of reasoning, without some, at the very basic level, some kind of justification. And since we've already been able to establish that mathematics is a subject that cuts across all others, or the other themes and foundations, then there must have been something that would have informed this proposal whereby they say it's no longer compulsory. It's a strong subject. One would have seen that it would make more sense if you said, okay, fine, look at something else and say, okay, that's not compulsory. You don't have to deal with that. But not something like mathematics. And I'm still wondering what that possibly could have been that they would say, all right, let's not make it what kind of chatter about mathematics have you heard from the time that you were in school to coming out to practice it by teaching it? What kind of chatter have you heard about this subject, perhaps that would fuel this decision that we are seeing being made at ministry level?
If I could just stop up on that, is one of the reasons is the decision is meant to reduce poor performance and high failure rate in mathematics by allowing learners to focus on subjects that match their strengths and career
That's
goals.
running away from a problem as opposed to facing it head on.
Is that what was reported, or is that what was said?
That is
Are they quoting what was said specifically?
And quote the authority.
It is one of the reports that was given by one of the dailies.
And the report, what report was
Who
this?
said it?
Yeah.
Quote the authority.
Yeah, who said it?
Yes.
Yes.
Because that's,
where and when?
That is detriment. If truly that is what was said, then it looks as a situation whereby you're running away from a problem as opposed to facing it head on and saying, how can we fix it? Which is why I asked, what is the chatter that we've heard about mathematics that you've heard while in its practice that may have brought about something like this?
I think, and Madam, allow me also to answer that question with another question also before I answer that. What also could have informed, because as I'm telling you, this is a working document, what would have informed initially? We say junior secondary school will be domiciled in secondary school, and actually there was a heavy investment in terms of infrastructure, human resource and money to make sure that junior secondary school are domiciled in secondary school, whereby we would be having 6 classes in current secondary school and 6 classes in primary. And again, all of a sudden it was changed, and junior secondary school now is domiciled in the previous primary school. Actually, the junior secondary school, it took the laying of former CS education, Matiang'i, and Magoha, for a period of about 6 years to put infrastructure, do capacity building for teachers, something a program called retooling, invest even in establishing and designing of books and materials to be used in junior secondary school. All of a sudden, it is falling back to primary school. Today, we are again saying there are not enough classrooms. So what I'm saying is this, mathematics, from my interaction with it, and I agree with him 100%. It actually even opens up our mind. The critical thinking that is there in mathematics, even if it is not deep-rooted, whenever you give a student a mathematical concept or a problem to interact with, and that is why mathematics, the only uniqueness in a subject whereby marks are not awarded, not given, awarded on the right answer. Marks awarded on methodology, on all the way to the answer.
Yes. And that's why your math teacher,
yes.
and I still remember it from till now, that's why your math teacher would insist and tell you, fine, give me the answer, but I want to see how you arrived at the answer.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. And that is the opening he is speaking about and we are speaking about. That methodology, even if you go 3 steps and fail, maybe the mathematics problem has 10 marks, and you go 3 steps and you fail the 7, at least you have gone the 3 steps and you have made an inroad. And that is why the marks would be awarded 3 out of 10 on the same question. Okay? That is why in mathematics we don't mark the answer, we mark the method and the answer. So we mark both of them
Can
together.
I ask a question?
That is opening our
Can I ask the question?
Yes.
There was what Dennis read relates to the logic and the reasons that are being quoted as having been stated by KICD. I don't know what it is they actually said, but that because of poor performance. So I asked the question, how do we train our teachers of mathematics? I say this as somebody who taught for 19 years. And whether students pass the subject you taught in an exam directly relates to you, not the student, you. If the student has a weakness, it is your job as a teacher, and you're trained to do this, to ensure that they understand the subject matter to the point where they can actually pass it. So how do we train our teachers of maths?
Thank you, and I can see Madam Du is looking at me because I'm a maths teacher.
Absolutely.
I'm trained as such. Let me say this, that there is a difference between you as a teacher learning mathematics and learning how to disseminate the information or the knowledge of mathematics to the student. Those are 2 totally different things. And currently, I would want to say this, that the training that is there, actually it has improved from the previous. And if Mr. Dennis, CT would remember, during their time, if you are ever a teacher, I think you used to get even your appointment letter.
Taught for 19 years.
19 years. Yes. Appointment letter right from the university.
You got the appointment before you finished your exam.
Before you even finish university. And of late, Madam Du and Dennis, you realize that performance of mathematics has actually improved. Why? One, it is because of the current training. The current training, as compared to previous years. Previous years, there was a mass failure in mathematics. Of late, although the improvement is gradual and progressive, but there is, a notable improvement in the performance. And that was even attributed by the Kenya National Examinations Council when they were releasing the exams for last year, that one of the subjects that recorded some improvement was mathematics. The reason is, the current training now establishes that before you qualify to be a mathematics teacher, you have to take a minimum, and I repeat, a minimum of 16 units in university of maths. That is number one. A minimum of 16. Then from the minimum of 16 units, then you also take another 16 units minimum for philosophy of education, curriculum, and also encroach together and combine together with the teaching practice. I don't know whether that was their training at that time.
It was in the it was in the curriculum for training.
Yes.
As a teacher, I'm wondering what it is that happened.
Good.
When
Now,
we were trained as teachers, we went through this.
Good.
Absolutely.
Now, number two.
Yes.
I have not finished. Number
Yes.
two. After you got employed as a teacher and you start teaching, there is what we call, now today we have, and I don't know whether you have heard of it, SMASTIA, Center for Mathematics and Sciences in Africa.
Yes.
That is a training whereby all mathematics and science teachers, every holiday, we used to attend cluster forums in the respective counties.
What were you trained in? What did they train you in?
No. It is capacity building on the subjects you are teaching. Okay? Also, emerging with the new methodologies of teaching and the new technology.
But
that is why it was being done at counties, and even it would cascade to the headquarters here in Karen.
But Mwalimu, this in-servicing or capacity building.
And in-service training.
Yeah, you're being trained in something. What was the focus?
The focus was to make sure that the methodology of disseminating that information, you are here, you are a mathematics teacher, all the knowledge you have in your head. But how do we get that knowledge you
From
have
your head
from
to
your
your
head
student?
to the student?
And
those are two different
And
things.
despite all these people are still failing maths.
And that is why I'm telling you, Mr. CT,
Yes.
that there is improvement in performance of maths as compared to previous years. It
So-
may not be very much significant, but there is a notable improvement.
So, Ndung'u,
and that is why the training was changed from, apart from now, just getting out from your degree and going, I'm sure City never went for semester training throughout his 19
I
years.
studied
because he was
literature and
a teacher
linguistics.
of English.
And even those of his age group, I'm sure they never underwent that. Because this one came later. Center for Mathematics and Sciences
and
to
still,
build capacity.
Mwalimu,
Yes.
Still, students were doing badly in maths, so that when there's a slight improvement, we celebrated a slight improvement.
Yes.
There was something which was wrong, and we never understood what was wrong.
Naturally, mathematics is not an easy subject.
No,
Okay.
actually it is.
And this is where I think we need to be going with this, because if the reasoning, and I just want to go through something that you've shared just now, Dennis. If the reasoning is that, number one, there's an element of difficulty. Number two, the way in which this information, by your own admission, is passed then from teachers to students, that there's a problem there. And that's why my insistence is, rather than chuck the whole thing out the window and say that, okay, fine, if it's too difficult, let's not go towards it, as opposed to try to fixing the problem, that's where we should be focusing. This public participation should be round about the conversation where we're saying, what can we do to make it better? Kiswahili is also a subject that students suffer with or struggle with immensely every year. In fact, if we look at the grades of Kiswahili have been dropping significantly over the last years. Why did we not say chuck Swahili out the window as well? So that's the question, that do we run away from a problem or do we address it? Allow me to read this. According to Professor Charles Ongondo,
Yes.
we have been wasting a lot of children as mathematics may not be relevant to them. This is what he said. You look at what's been serving you and what can be improved. Mathematics as a selective subject as the pre-career stage is a global practice and not a new phenomenon to the Kenyan context. He went on to say, mathematics for junior school covers all the general knowledge in mathematics for one to be numerically literate. For those pursuing arts, sports and humanities, mathematics is still available for them, but it is not compulsory. Under CBC, critical thinking and problem solving is a core competency. It is important to note that while the foundational skills are developed by mathematical and logical thinking, this is core competency is not a preserve of mathematics. The curriculum in all learning areas and subjects has been made made provision for development of this core competency. Another question came from Dr. David Njengere, who said that making mathematics compulsory only benefits a few learners. How is mathematics helping if 30% are scoring E's? We're forcing them to do what's not aligned to their potential, ability and interest. Let's start by appreciating that not all of us will fit in the formal careers. And I have a problem with that.
That logic is completely
And I'll also
warped.
challenge Dr. Jengere and Professor Ogondo. They are my close friends. Huh?
No.
I would charge them this way, that fine, what we are saying is, initially everybody could learn mathematics to the deepest part of it. Today, what we are saying, and even those who did statistics, that was general statistics. It's not deep-rooted statistics, but it is a mathematics concept in it. Okay? Those of us who are doing BA in university, they did a unit called General Mathematics. General. And it is at university, and it was a core subject at the university for those who are doing BA and BSc. General. It doesn't matter which course you are doing, but you have to do general mathematics. Why are you doing? Today, there is also another unit that has been introduced called communication skills. Isn't it? Whether you are doing engineering, because as an engineer, will you not communicate at one time? That is what we call literacy and numericals. Those are basic things that should never be left out. What we should be doing, and I charge Dr. Jengere and Professor Ogondo, is that we should not get so much deep into those people who are doing the rest of the two pathways, that is social sciences and that is sports. But there must be general standard minimum requirements.
This justification that you're reading speaks of somebody who's simply scraping the bottom of a barrel to justify something which even they don't seem convinced. Look, when something appears to be difficult and the difficulty is manifested in the failure of students, it is not the subject. It is the teacher. Let me repeat. That's why I asked, how are they taught? And methodology is all good and well. Students don't learn simply because you're speaking and explaining things. Students look at the teacher, how the teacher relates to the subject,
how he communicates.
If a teacher loves the subject, chances are those students are going to love that subject
as well.
So, if you're teaching a subject and it is a clear teeth-pulling exercise and your students can see it, even they will respond. The problem has been the mindset of those who train teachers. How do you get teachers to have the mindset where maths is taught as something enjoyable and...
CT, I think you're onto something here, because just a couple, and sometimes we have to use an example to further a conversation. So how in schools, now it has become the flavor of the month, whereby parents are invited to school to have a meeting with their teachers, the subject teachers, and see what's going on. And I remember just this January, and I went to my daughter's school, and the math teacher looked like he had bitten a lemon, and he just didn't look like a happy fella. And I'm now being able to relate it with what you're saying now. And he's had the list there and he's saying, well, they've just not understood this thing. And I've tried to make them to understand it. And I thought to myself, there's something wrong here, because already from the position that you have taken, this is the national school, one of the top in the country. And this is the attitude that this gentleman has taken. Like, you know what? I've taught it. If they don't understand it, there's nothing I can do. They just need to go and do some more work. No. So I hear you that there needs to be the connection there that, if you don't love it, that it doesn't matter what school they're in. It can be your top national school in the country. It can be a hoity-toity private school in the suburbs of wherever. It doesn't matter. You don't love it, these students are not going to love it. And that's why I think making this thing non-compulsory is running away from the problem that needs to be handled. And we'll find that we do that a lot. Instead of dealing with the issue, we want to color it as something else.
And that is why, Madam I challenge City. That is why there is SMASTEA, the Center for Mathematics and Sciences in Africa.
That's the system.
And that is why it was introduced in this country. Actually, we are the center, in Africa. That is why it brought in the idea of making sure that the information the teacher has is disseminated to the student. But finally, before I give CT also a chance, I see he wants to react. The Asian tigers, the likes of Singapore, Malaysia, and all that, because they usually pick, and I'll tell you this, Madam Du, they usually pick some of the best performing students here in Kenya in mathematics and sciences, and some of them are incorporated in their learning institutions in Japan and those Asian tigers for the sake of the technology and the knowledge of mathematics and sciences they have. Other African countries usually come to us SMASTEA in Kenya to learn how our teachers are being retooled, how our teachers are being going in service training in Karen, in SMASTEA. So what we are doing is this. Let's not run away from this problem, as you are saying it. Let's not run away from it. But now, Madam Du, I would say this. Is not lost yet. This is still a working document, and I'm saying CBC or CBE for that matter is still under improvement. The more we give our input, the more we contribute to it, the more we shall make it better. But something I can tell you, the train has taken off on CBE or CBC.
Okay.
We cannot stop it at this moment. What we can do, we can keep on improving as we move into the future so that we incorporate and make sure that the content, the content that is there in mathematics, for those who are doing the rest of pathways for the STEM, is tabulated and culminated by KICD to fit the concept they need, not necessarily requiring the entire of mathematical concept that we learn in university.
You know, there are popular urban myths. One of them is maths is difficult. I taught the English language in Mombasa, and that popular myth was there with the English language, that it is difficult.
Yeah.
I've heard that popular myth said about Kiswahili as well. I've heard it said about physics.
I was doing better in Kiswahili than even English.
Yes. I've heard it said about literally every subject that is taught. Maths, unfortunately, gets a bad rap from day one because children have parents. If your parents didn't like maths, they will speak ill of maths.
Trickles down, yeah.
So as you're being brought up, again, I'm going back to mindset. You believe maths is difficult. Before you even tackled it, you approach it from the point of view it is difficult. Not that it's enjoyable. The world as we know it and the monumental changes we've had with civilizations have been anchored in maths. Whether they're talking about pyramids, whether they're talking about the huge buildings, whether they're talking about bridges, it doesn't matter what you think about. I marvel at what KICD is doing. The very foundation of this civilization that we speak of have been grounded in this subject in one way or the other. Yes. And then you are saying that you want to deny a certain sector of the community this ability to contribute to what was already done. It's extremely strange. I have to ask the question, where's the pressure coming from? Because clearly, pressure is coming from somewhere that this thing must change and it must go in a certain direction.
Yeah, and
because these guys are falling over themselves explaining this simple thing.
I hear you, City, and there's something you've raised earlier in terms of how our teachers being trained to teach mathematics, because I've just been checking online. There's a teacher in South Africa who's been using amapiano and music arts to teach mathematics, and the data shows that the students have actually been performing well because every time they come through solving problems, they remember how the teacher was teaching it, and even
the music
and even the formulas have been coined into amapiano and music. It's easier for students to remember.
Then is consider, how is it that a whole subsect of human beings in Southeast Asia, how is it that they seem to be so very good in this subject?
Mathematics.
What? Is it that they eat more seafood? Is it that the air they breathe has mathematical formulas in it? What is it? If you look at it and you examine it, believe me, it's their culture.
Yes.
Even the way their language is structured, it's the mindset, the emphasis that parents put in it,
government intervention.
So
all these things.
Ndung'u, can the approach, you talk about, having gone to the center for this capacity building and training, to then be able to trickle this information down to students, can approaches be tweaked? Can approaches be changed so that it then becomes an easier trickle-down effect?
Absolutely, because what we need, there is training and there is passing the information. And I tend to agree with the city here that the moment you have the conception in your mind that it is difficult, it is impossible, it will not be possible. But the moment that we like now, I don't know whether Dr. Jengere himself is a mathematics teacher by training. I presume he is a linguistic. He's my friend. But that should not inform us where we should go. Because what we need is, we need the knowledge. In fact, if you ask Dr. Jengere today, he's my friend, he'll tell you even the current assessment of KCSE, the current one they are doing, because it will be eradicated in the next 2 to 3 years. We shall be having the last KCSE in 2027. After 2028, we shall not be having KCSE again. It will be the end of KCSE. Today, they only train, they told me, they test on on literacy and numericals. That is literacy. Numericals, they go for mathematics because those are numericals. Literacy, they go for 3 subjects. They go for English, Kiswahili, or Kenya Sign Language. They select either one of them, the one that you have performed the best, plus now other 5, and now they get your aggregate mini grade. Why do they do that? Because they know without literacy and without numericals, it doesn't matter what you are doing. You'll get stuck somewhere. And that is why they give, because mathematics cannot be optioned or stroked with anything else. It has to be there. Then for languages, they stroke, and even then, today you go to Kenya School of Law, you want to pursue advocates training program diploma. The first thing they look for is what was your performance in either English or Kiswahili. They don't specifically say English or Kiswahili mandatory. They stroke each other because that is literacy. And that is why I'm saying, if we can be able to embed literacy, why are we not saying that English or Kiswahili, they are also optional in the rest of pathways? Okay? Because they are there. You'll be learning English, you'll be learning either Kiswahili or Kenya Sign Language in the rest of pathways. Why don't we also make sure that maths is also there in the rest of pathways? Because maths cannot be stroked with anything else. And that is why I'm saying this is a working document, and I believe from the stakeholders' input, and I'm happy for the input that was going on last week all over the country. The input that came from almost every and single stakeholder was that let us make maths compulsory. But now let's redesign the curriculum so that it doesn't encompass everything, particularly for those students who are doing social sciences and arts and sports. But those who are doing STEM, they can now get deeper into it. But making it optional, I don't think it's an option.
But Wairimu, surely even before the CBE was brought into place, what you're discussing has always been there. From 1 and 2, you studied certain subjects. Then you left some, and you actually chose a pathway when you went from 3 and 4.
Absolutely.
Yes. So, I mean, this is Hackneyed. I mean,
it's the same thing that you even do. It is Hackneyed. It's the same thing that you do at the university level, isn't it? That usually in your first year,
you're using strong words.
Even in your first year at the university, there are basic courses that you will do. You will then start to branch out in your second and core subjects in your second and third year. But that there were basics that you had to do to ensure that foundation.
The foundation is strong.
Is set. Are we moving away from that?
The argument is that these subjects have been learned in junior secondary. And that is why in junior secondary, the mathematics...
So they're saying that the basic... Sorry, I just wanted to clarify that because I do see that there are quite some comments that are coming up here and saying that, if you got the basic fundamentals in junior secondary, which is 7, 8 and 9, then you actually don't need to pick them up again in 10, 11 and 12. But is that the case?
Look at the capacity of that child in grade up to junior secondary, up to grade 9. That's still a toddler. Okay? And that is why we want this child who is moving to grade... What is basic education? It's all the way up to grade 12. Okay? Currently up to Form 4. That is the basic education. So we want by the time you are clearing with your basic education, you are swimming with that maths, which is compulsory. You are swimming with that linguistic literacy, which is compulsory. And then after that, when you go to higher education is now when you join tertiary institutions. Then now you can have a choice. But when we drop it at junior secondary, we have not yet cleared with the basic education. Basic education, Madam Du, ends at grade 12. It doesn't end at grade 9. And that is why we are insisting up to grade 12. Let's make it compulsory. But now for senior secondary, let's make it a little bit flexible so that even the units and the topics you are learning, if you are choosing a different pathway, they are not as much entailed as that student who is learning the STEM subject, which is science and mathematics. Okay,
so our time is running out. You've talked about there being a lot of public participation in the last couple of days and that this is still a working document. Where do you see this going in the next couple? I mean, it's going to be decided. We have this election coming up in a month.
Yes.
So what does it look like really quickly?
Selection can be done, not necessarily even a month. It can be postponed. We still have time. We are in the month of March. I see we have a listening government. Actually, when one thing I love about the Kenya Kwanza government, and that one was it, immediately they came. Like when CBC was introduced, there was no public participation. And something I like is that when President Ruto took over power through Kenya Kwanza government, the first thing that was done was to make sure there was public participation through Presidential Working Party on Education Reforms. That was a very good input because parents parents had an opportunity to give their input. Because students would have gone to junior secondary in far-flung schools and areas whereby you lose touch and contact their child. Finally, on this one, because there have been public participation and we have given our input as stakeholders and also as parents, because I'm a stakeholder, I'm also a parent. It is my belief, and I would pray the government, please listen to this, because it is coming from serious stakeholders in this country. Serious parents of this country. Listen to it. Let's incorporate. There is still time. We can adjust and still get it right, other than getting it just for the sake of finishing the line without getting it right. Things don't go wrong. Things start wrong.
There you go. And that's a great point to end on. Thank you so much for being here with us this morning. Ndung'u Wangenye has been here this morning. He's the National Secretary, Kenya Teachers in Hardship and Arid Areas Welfare Association, a former CECM of Education at Nyandarua County. Thank you for joining us in that conversation. It'll be interesting to see what happens in the next coming days.
Thank you, Do. Thank you, CT, and thank you, Dennis.
Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.